Well, to kick it off with our lead story of the day, more Americans are saying that they are worse off financially than at any other time since the Great Recession. But if you listen to Joe Biden's State of the Union address, everything's A-OK. This whole narrative that the economy has been doing fine has been pushed for like 2 years now, but it was really pushed heavily right before the State of the Union address because all the reporters in the press briefing room the other day were questioning Karine Jean-Pierre on, hey, we've all done our own poll numbers. We're all in alignment with one another. We're all with different outlets here, and we're all getting the same numbers that Americans are worse off. So how do you make sense of that? We'll get to that in just one moment, but Americans are more pessimistic about their finances than any other time since the Great Recession, as economic challenges such as inflation persisted throughout the year. Check this out. Some 50% of respondents to a Gallup poll survey, 50% are saying they're financially worse off. Crazy numbers compared to 1 year ago. While 35% believe they are financially better off, marking the most dismal results for the poll since the economy crashed in 2008 and 9. Lower income Americans were the most likely to report that they have been worse off since last year. Approximately 61% reflected pessimism about their current finances in 2023, while 41% said the same this year. There's a clear partisan divide with respect to perceptions of financial well-being. 61% of Republicans and 37% of Democrats say they were worse off. However, Americans tend to offer more optimistic views of their finances under certain administrations because there's an inherent bias within an individual to favor one administration over the other. So you're going to have some sort of skewed data with that. It's really hard to remove biases out of observational studies because you're not designing an experiment where you can put yourself and subject yourself into it to remove those variables in the first place. So it's inherently going to happen. Well, if you recall, we did cover this the other week. This is not a new press briefing. You have Brian Deese, which is the National Economic Council Director under the Biden administration, taking a question about a very similar poll here, and he spins it, manipulates it. But one thing I also want you guys to notice is all the reporters, check out literally every single reporter that's possibly on screen, shaking their head in unison and talking about the poll that the reporter is going to question him on in agreement. Because one of the main themes of this press briefing was about that data of all of them doing their own polls and coming up with the same numbers roughly about how the economy sucks and everybody's worse off. But Joe Biden's pushing this whole narrative. Oh, everything's fine. Nothing to worry about. Things are good. So here's this clip. Watch everybody around her. It's hilarious.
Thanks, Brian. Another polling question, you touched on it a little bit with some of my colleagues' questions. You mentioned how the president said Friday that the state of the economy is strong. We had a poll out over the weekend, ABC News, that found that 41% of Americans say they're worse off financially now than before this president took office. How do you explain the disconnect there of why this administration's message about the strong economy is not getting through?
Right. So I think the poll that you just cited is actually consistent. So about 2/3 of Americans say that their circumstances are better than before. We say it either way.
Well, you can't say it either way, Brian, because it doesn't work that way, and that's not what the numbers say. And he's actually corrected in the same press briefing as time goes on by another reporter after he gives some sort of cockamamie answer to that question. So I didn't show it, but let's actually show this reporter correcting him. And he's literally stunned. Brian Deese doesn't know what to say when it's brought to his attention that everything he just rambled about was wrong. And here's the actual numbers and here's the interaction.
About that same question, I guess when you've been asked variations on this, on the perceptions voters are having in the economy, but when do people start feeling more optimistically about the outlook? And just to clarify on the stat that was just cited, it's only 16% of those in the poll believe they're financially better off than when Biden entered the office, the White House. It's 42% feel about the same. So just to clarify, it's
he said 66%, Brian Deese did, by the way, that they are better off. Well, you could just kind of phrase it the opposite way. No, you can't, Brian. No, you can't. You were just corrected by another reporter from the White House press pool.
Only 16% are feeling better off. Yeah, so when do people start feeling, more people start feeling better off about the financial future?
Notice that Brian Deese there just kind of laughs about it. He doesn't even know what to say because he looked like a knucklehead by saying 66% are better off when in actuality it was 16%. But hey, it's just numbers, right? It's just a challenge. It's not a crisis. Whenever you hear the Biden administration talk about a challenge, it's a crisis and things are bad. Well, the results come after a volatile year throughout the economy that was throttled by inflationary pressures, labor shortages, and supply chain bottlenecks, contributing to negative economic growth in the first 2 quarters of last year. Year over year, headline inflation was charted at 6.5% in 2022 in December. That's from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, marking a decrease from 9.1% inflationary record in June of 2020, meaning we're still seeing triple the amount of inflation that we would normally see in a normal year, where you're looking at roughly 1 to 3% on average. Well, that was not the messaging that Joe Biden was pushing in his whole, State of the Union address that I had to subject myself to. It was so bad that I thought I was getting dementia, and that's why we didn't have a show the other day, because I didn't know what the heck was going on. So clearly it's contagious, folks. Be careful. This is what Joe Biden said. Inflation has been a global problem because of the pandemic that disrupted supply chain and Putin's war that disrupted energy and food supplies. This is one of the biggest talking points from this administration is Putin's price hike. It's all Putin's war that's done everything. Even though inflation was up before Putin ever invaded Ukraine, and those are numbers that anybody with half a brain can look up themselves. They do the same messaging with gas prices, that gas prices were already astronomically high before Joe Biden took office, when they weren't. They increased exponentially even before February, meaning before Putin ever invaded Ukraine. But we can't talk about all those things, folks, because it goes against the narrative. If you go against the narrative, you're a bigot. You're all these other things. You're the names that the lefties want to call of us, all the libs. Well, but we're better positioned than any other country. This is from Joe Biden. Yes, you heard him. But we're better positioned than any other country. Food inflation is coming down, he said. Inflation has fallen every month for the last 6 months, while take-home pay has gone up. Oh, well, let's see how he manipulates this, you guys. Even as nominal wages rose amid companies hiking pay to attract more employees, and some effect of that was the government falsely inflating the economy by sending out stimulus checks to everybody and continuing those stimulus checks, even though there was many people within the economy that never needed them because they didn't lose their job in the first place, or they were still working. But since they're going to pump them out like hotcakes, what actually ended up happening was the government was out competing the private sector. So people were staying home because they were making more money sitting on the couch than they would be at home. So what the employers have to do, they had to compete now with the government to get people back to work, which is insane, which is absolutely insane. So as nominal wages rose, the country nevertheless witnessed a decrease in real wages of 1.7% from December 21 to December 2022. Again, that was from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The latter metric considers the effect of inflation on household purchasing power. So not only are you making less theoretically, but you're also being affected by inflation as well, which has been going up and basically went up and dropped down just a little bit here. If that isn't bad enough, if that isn't bad enough, wait till we get to these numbers here. The pessimism regarding current finances also follows one of the worst years of the stock market in modern history. And Joe Biden was there twice for it. The S&P 500 index dropped 20% last year, rivaling the 37% decline witnessed in 2008 amid the collapse of the banking system. Who was president in 2008? Oh, it was Barack Obama. And who was his vice president? Oh, it was Joe Biden. So Joe Biden was around in the Oval Office twice. This guy sucks. If you really want to kick in the nuts, retirement account values therefore plummeted 25% for the first 3 quarters of the year. 25%. But it's just a challenge, you guys. Not a crisis whatsoever. Respondents to the Gallup poll survey maintained a fair degree of optimism regarding their future financial prospects. Some 60% believe their finances will be better off 1 year from now, while 28% believe their finances will be worse off. Gallup said Americans remain optimistic about the year ahead for their financial situations, which they typically are almost regardless of recent economic conditions, meaning people are very hopeful that things are going to turn around. And through 100 years of tracking history or more that we've seen in the United States, that tends to be true, which is why you're going to have a poll year after year that asks the same question, getting the same exact result. Let me know what you think about this, though. Do you think things are going to get better under Joe Biden? You think things are going to get worse? Are your finances in order here with the Biden administration controlling everything? Let me know in the comment section below. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.